Yo, what's good, y'all? My name is Khan, and in today's video, I will be talking about Jugram and if you could beat each of the Schutzstaffel individually. And before we get into it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because I will be posting a lot more content like this, especially if you enjoy Bleach.
私のシュリフトは B、ザ・バランス。我が身の不運はさらなる不運としてお前に降り注ぐ。
Jugram, the Grandmaster to Stern Ritters, doesn't really play much of a prominent role in the early arcs of Thousand Blood War. But even with the minuscule amount of feats he has, Jugram does make an impact when he's shown, and it proves why he's deserving of the title Grandmaster. In case y'all didn't know, a Grandmaster, like his name suggests, is a master in a field whose skills or accomplishments exceed those of other masters. That right there should give y'all a baseline on how strong Jugram really is compared to the other Stern Ritters. The first feats Jugram has is in the first Quincy evasion. He pulls up to the Shinigami and one-shots a father Soul Reaper named Hidemoto, and many more Soul Reapers after that, which really isn't a major feat. Almost every Stern Ritter did the same. After the fact is where things get interesting, because Jugram was also present during Yamamoto's battle with the fake Yuha Roid, and Roid states that if he didn't have Brute Vein active at this distance, he would have been reduced to ashes. Jugram was also around the same distance as Roid and was taking the same Ryatsu. Although this is not a major feat, this is still impressive. People often underestimate the strength of Roid Lord, but that's a topic for another video. Now moving on, Ichigo had just entered the Soul Society while simultaneously one-shotting a Stern Ritter, and it's obvious Ichigo is bloodlusted at this point, and is passively exerting a tremendous amount of Ryatsu. As you see, everybody in the Soul Society looks up in the sky in surprise and shock as Ichigo pulls up. And then there's Jugram. Jugram, after sensing this bloodlusted Ichigo's power, tells Yuha, "Shall I purge him?" So he's completely confident that he can slap up full-brain Bankai Ichigo. The same Ichigo who was able to outclass Koge, who was amped by Aeon. Additionally, Jugram was also able to blitz and essentially one-shot Ichigo casually. What makes this a major feat is that Ichigo had just activated his Quincy Ryatsu, so he was significantly stronger. And this is shown when full-brain Ichigo is able to block and react to attacks from Yuha, and almost force him to using his full power. He's also able to damage Yuha. And Yuha was also able to absorb Yamamoto's Bankai and also control it. And Shikai Yamamoto alone is massively above the rest of the captains, including characters like End of Season Byakuya, End of Season Shunsui, etc. Now, before y'all say anything irrational, right, I'm telling y'all right now, when full-brain Ichigo fought Yuha was holding back. He was not trying to kill Ichigo, right? And it's already stated he wasn't going full power. So do with that what you may. Don't go too crazy. Now, moving on. This is just something that I thought was interesting, and I just wanted to include, right? When Uryu was chosen as successor, the rest of the Stern Ritters were surprised for obvious reasons. But Basby then states to Jugram that most of the Stern Ritters thought he was going to become the successor. So that is clearly a testament to Jugram's strength, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense for some weakling, low-to-mid Stern Ritter to become a successor, obviously, right? And some people might say he was only the successor because he can activate the Almighty. And sure, that's fine. You would still need some level of strength, or you're still fodder even with a broken ability, right? Like imagine throwing Hinataro into a pit with Kyoko Sugetsu in his hand and asking him to fight Kinpachi, Shansui, Toshiro. Like, no, he would still get folded immediately. No hesitation. No type of deliberation. Immediately gets folded. But yeah, like I was saying, one of the main things when it comes to overpowered abilities in Bleach is that the people that have overpowered abilities are also overpowered in baseline stats, like Aizen, Yuha. The reason why their abilities are so overpowered is because they're overpowered. Like Aizen's Ryatsu is overpowered, right? Moving on from that, Jugram and Shunsui have an interesting encounter. A lot of people take this statement where Shunsui says we're evenly matched to say Shunsui is relative to Jugram, but they ignore the context with this statement. Nanao had currently created a wall that stops Quincy's powers, right? So Jugram couldn't do anything at that point, right? He couldn't engage with Shunsui, so they were even at that point. They couldn't do anything. So then Jugram destroys the wall by absorbing Orishi in the wall. And then Nanao creates another wall. And then Jugram's about to break that other wall with his drift before he gets caught away. So what we can take from that encounter is Jugram was going to body Shunsui, right? And then Nanao saved the day with the key to the wall. And then he was about to body both of them, but then they got saved by the buff, basically. Alright, the next time we see Jugram is in Kangdo's execution. And this is the first time we get to see a bit into Jugram's drift. Kangdo was able to block a strike from Jugram with the ability the Iron, and Jugram, by using his drift, the balance, he allocated Kangdo's fortune into the misfortune, and by either lowering Kangdo's durability or increasing his AP or doing both simultaneously, he sliced Kangdo in half. Jugram again is confident that he can beat a bloodlusted true Shikai Ichigo, and we know Jugram would not say this if he wasn't able to perform said task. And this is shown when he completely bodied Fullbring Ichigo in one shot. During the Basby vs Jugram fight, we get to see the backstory of Jugram. A young Jugram was completely unfazed by Yuha, whose Ryatsu was completely folding other people around him. I won't be going in depth into Jugram's backstory. I'm gonna save that for later when I talk about his abilities. During the Basby fight, Jugram was casually slapping and blitzing Basby. Jugram wasn't even trying to kill him, he was just slapping Basby. Now, this is a very important scare. Jugram was stated by Kubo to be the strongest enemy ever in the manga. A person who can see through everything with the Almighty. Now, this statement is very important. With this statement, you could get Jugram above the likes of Transcendent Aizen, and there wouldn't be any contradiction at all. You can even go as far to say he's above any U-Haul prior to this statement. And again, it would be perfectly fine because it's not contradicted. And people try to say, oh, Jugram can't use the Almighty to its full potential. And what they use is the Uryu statement, right? Uryu is even acknowledged by Jugram to have power that surpasses the Almighty. And it's even a consistent thing throughout the entire arc that Uryu has power that surpasses Yuha and the Almighty. And it's even stated in the novels that Haschwalth was capable of using the Almighty, but Uryu's power surpasses the Almighty, right? So no, Jugram being the strongest enemy ever at that point, keyword at that point, is not contradicted. With the Almighty, is not contradicted. Now let's look at the abilities of Jugram. So first off, let's talk about Jugram's drift, the balance. With the balance, Jugram is capable of manipulating fortune and misfortune. Any misfortune that occurs in his domain can be allocated to the fortunate and vice versa. Doing this, he maintains balance in the world. Any misfortune that happens to him can be absorbed by his friend shield and rained down on said opponent with additional misfortune. The balance can also be applied when Jugram's in an equal situation. When activated, Jugram can tip the scale, therefore causing whatever situation to go his way. So in simpler terms, any good fortune his enemy experiences will be reflected back on them as misfortune, and any misfortune Jugram experiences can be absorbed or reflected, or both, and added as additional misfortune. Because Jugram and Yuha are essentially two sides of the same coin, when Yuha is asleep, Jugram acquires the Almighty and his pupils split into three. With the Almighty, Jugram is able to see into the future and attack with Black Ryatsu, similar to Yuha. With the Almighty, Jugram is able to see into the future, although it's never confirmed whether or not Jugram can change the future or not. Now that my scaling for Jugram is done, it's time to get into the premise of the video. Jugram versus the Schutzstaffel. Like I said before, Jugram will be fighting each of the Schutzstaffel individually, basically like a gauntlet. I will briefly go over their powers and abilities and their best feats, and then we'll see whether or not they can beat Jugram in a fight.
Gift BLEACH からは絶対脱出不可能だ。ギフトリング
Askin was able to survive fatal attacks from both Yoruichi and Yushiro while in Junko. After surviving those attacks, Askin was able to gain immunity to both Yoruichi and Yushiro. Askin is able to trap Yoruichi and Kisuke in a Gift Ball Deluxe. He's able to react to a surprise attack from Kisuke, although this Kisuke is weakened by the Gift Ball Deluxe. Askin also activates the Gift Ring, which is able to instantly kill Kisuke's eyeballs. After doing so, Askin was going to raise the concentration of the Gift Ball Deluxe. But before he could do so, Askin is impaled from behind by Grimmjow. Even after getting his heart ripped out by Grimmjow and getting impaled twice, Askin is still able to speak. When Askin dies, the effects of the Gift Ball Deluxe increases. With the death dealing, Askin can perfectly calculate the absolute lethal dose of any substance he takes into his body and raise or lower that value as he sees fit. For example, by consuming blood, he can decrease the lethal dosage of the blood in his opponent's body, thus making it fatal to them. He also has his own healing factor. He also gains immunity whenever he's hit by any attack. He also has the gift ball, which is like a poison sphere that floats around, and if you hit it, you get poisoned. In addition, he has the gift bad, which is like a darkened area on the floor that's the shape of a circle, and if you step on it, Askin can lower their resistance to anything. Askin also has a vote standing called God Taster, and in his vote standing, his death dealing is enhanced. Askin can automatically adapt to changes in poison. He also has the gift ball deluxe and the gift ring. Alright, now that I finished with Askin, who do I think wins between Jugram and Askin? I think Jugram would absolutely body this fight, right? Not only does he have the superior AP and speed, but his hacks also counters anything the death dealing has. Okay, for example, let's say Jugram didn't one shot and blitz Askin, right? The gift ball wouldn't do anything to Jugram because he wouldn't be dumb enough to hit it. If Askin activated the gift bad, Jugram with the Almighty would be able to see it in the future, right? And not step on it. And even if he didn't have the Almighty, and Askin was able to bait Jugram into stepping on it, Jugram would just allocate the misfortune of him being poisoned to his shield and then reflect it back to Askin. Now let's say Askin even gets the chance to activate Vote Standing. Jugram would still body Askin just like how Kisuke was, and then he would use Shadow Teleportation to leave the Gift Ball Deluxe. Alright, next up we have Pernida. Pernida was able to catch Yoruichi off guard and completely mess up her arm. He was also able to attack base Kenpachi twice with his nerves after he got hit both times. Pernida's nerves was also able to control inanimate objects and tag Mayuri. Any one of Pernida's fingers is able to grow an arm. Pernida broke out of Mayuri's Bankai after being eaten by it. After being blown to pieces, it was still able to activate its nerves and attack Mimu. Mayuri states that Pernida's Ryatsu is essentially the same as the right arm of the Soki Bihigami, but that doesn't have to entail strength. It could just be referring to the identity of the Ryatsu. Pernida is able to fire multiple Quincy arrows, and one of those arrows was able to come into contact with Mayuri and completely destroy his arm. Pernida can evolve by absorbing information from objects it touches with its nerves. For example, it was able to evolve itself to the level of Zaraki, and also replicate the ability of Mayuri's Bankai. Pernida's Shrift is called the Compulsory. It basically allows Pernida to fire his nerves at his opponents. Pernida is able to control anything that comes in contact with the nerves, and also he can completely eviscerate any part of his opponent's body. Now, who would win between Jugram and Pernida? Just like the Askin fight, I think Jugram would absolutely stomp this battle too. We know Pernida's main ability revolves around his nerves and evolution, but that would be irrelevant if Pernida's nerves aren't fast enough to tag Jugram, so Jugram would just be casually dodging Pernida's nerves during the fight, and for that reason, there would be no way for Pernida to evolve and get stronger, right? So Jugram would just be cutting this man up like he's sushi or something. But we do have to remember that Pernida has regeneration. A way Jugram can counter regeneration is with the balance. Regeneration could be seen as fortune for the opponent. So all Jugram would have to do is allocate the fortune of regeneration to the misfortune. And by doing so, Pernida's regeneration would subdue, and Jugram wouldn't have to worry about that, and he could just murk him.
ジリエル神の使いの前になすすべなどなし
Alright, next up is the leader of the Schutzstaffel, Lille Barrow. Lille is able to one-shot multiple city block areas, and with the X-axis, he's able to blast multiple holes in the Wetsu. He was confident he could kill Ichigo with the X-axis. And Uryu knows this because he fires the arrow before Lille shoots, and tells Lille it's not wise to kill Ichigo. Lille is able to dodge multiple sneak attacks from Shunsui. When Lille activates Roasted Deck, he's able to fire multiple shots with his wings, and he was able to tag Shunsui. Lille is able to regenerate after getting his head blown off. Lille's AoE significantly increases when he activates his second form. Now, let's talk about the X-axis. Lille's rifle can pierce anything he fires at with perfect accuracy and cannot be dodged. When Lille fires, the rifle does not release a bullet, it just pierces everything between the rifle and the target. It cannot be blocked by barriers, and it also ignores durability. The X-axis also makes his body intangible. He only becomes intangible when he opens his eyes though. If his eyes open a total of 3 times in a row, he will become intangible for the rest of the battle. Now let's talk about who would win between Jugram and Lille. Jugram again bodies this fight. He would just blitz Lille before he can even open his eyes. Similar to how Owetsu was able to blitz Lille, and Lille couldn't even react and use his X-axis, right? So Lille's best feat is reacting to Sunsweet, who doesn't really have very good speed scaling in Thousand Blood War. And don't comment that he's the captain of the Gote 13, so he's the strongest captain. Please do not comment that, that's dumb, right? Like, Jugram being the Grandmaster of the Stern Ritters does not make him the strongest Stern Ritter. It's other feats and scaling that will put him where he's at. Let's say Jugram isn't able to blitz Lille, and Lille is able to shoot Jugram with his gun. Jugram would just reflect the damage back to Lille. And now let's say Lille is able to go Volstanding, and now he's constantly intangible. Jugram would be able to counter his intangibility with the balance. Intangibility could potentially be seen as a fortune in battle, and Jugram would just allocate the fortune to the misfortune. Now, if that didn't work, another way Jugram can win is by getting damage and reflecting the damage. Sunsweet was able to damage Lille by sharing their damage, right? Jugram could essentially do the same with the balance. Matter of fact, if Jugram had the Almighty, he could just casually aim dodge Lille's attacks, because he would know where Lille's going to shoot in the future. So, in conclusion, Jugram would just blitz and one-shot base Lille before he's able to activate his intangibility. Last but not least, we have Gerard. After getting his head and upper body completely destroyed by Byakuya, he was able to completely regenerate and increase in size via the miracle. He then states that with the miracle, anything that has been wounded can be exchanged with God size. While in God size, he was able to casually react to and swat away Byakuya's Senbon Takura, showing that Gerard's speed and strength does increase along with his size. He also stated that the other captain's spiritual pressure was so thin that he could barely even sense them anymore. This shows that his Ryasu vastly increases along with his size. Gerard was also able to react to and block an attack from base Kenpachi with his shield, and also react to, dodge, and trade blows with Shikai Kenpachi. He was also able to overpower Toshiro, and also resisted Adult Toshiro's ice, who is implied to be a lot stronger than his previous form. Gerard states that he is the biggest, fastest, and strongest Quincy. Some people might question the validity of this statement, but the narrator also confirms that Gerard is the strongest Stern Ritter. You could generalize the statement and say it's not referring to specifically Kenpachi and Gerard, but I think it's fairly obvious that it's referring to them, as it says the blade is nicked. So, and that only happens during their battle. I think it's fair to say that it's specifically referring to Kenpachi and Gerard. To be honest, it's all up to interpretation and whatever you want to argue. There is no objectivity with this statement, right? So I'm gonna just leave it up to whatever you think and whatever you interpret based off what you read, right? So there's like a little love triangle between Jugram, Uryu, and Gerard, like on who's the strongest between them, right? Because on any given day, you can argue that Gerard is stronger than both of them. You can argue that Jugram is stronger than both of them, and you can argue that Uryu is stronger than both of them. And it all depends, and it's just based on you and what do you think, right? So besides U-Haul, of course, I don't think any other Quincy besides them three can claim to be the strongest. That's just how I feel. Now that I'm done with my little rant, we can talk about Gerard's Shrift, the miracle. Gerard is able to manifest miracles upon himself by giving form to the thoughts, feelings, and desires of himself and those around him. By using people's fear, he is able to convert any physical damage upon him to increase his size and strength. Upon transforming into his god-sized form, any injuries he has sustained previously instantly disappear. And if Gerard loses a limb, it will automatically be reformed in a flash of light and come back even stronger. So to put it simply, if Gerard dies, he comes back even stronger, and if he loses a limb, that limb comes back even stronger. So he's basically immortal. I might say the name wrong, but he has the Ho Fung. Anytime the Ho Fung sword gets chipped or damaged in any way, the damage was reflected disproportionately to the enemy in large slashes or wounds. It was strong enough to take Norizarashi, which is Kenpachi Shikai, with only a chip, and in its larger form, he is capable of firing energy blasts from the sword that cover large areas. He also has the Helic Bogan. I probably said that wrong too, but the Helic Bogan is a Quincy arrow that he calls a pure torrent of power, but we never got to see it fired though. So that's all for Gerard. Now let's get into the final battle for this video. Gerard versus Jugram. Who wins? This is a very tough battle. You can argue for either of them winning, right? So I'm gonna give you my arguments for Jugram first. So for Jugram, right, obviously he's stated to be the strongest enemy ever, but Gerard is stated to be the strongest enemy after that, right? So what you would have to do is debunk those statements. For the Gerard statement, you could just say there is no way to prove that Gerard has knowledge of the other Quincy, right? And for the narrative statement, you could just generalize it and say it's not just referring to Kenpachi and Gerard, right? And then you can say Jugram can use the balance to counter the miracle and stop Gerard from evolving, because regeneration and immortality can be seen as a fortune Yada 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 yada. You already know. I've said it like 40 times this video, but I do think Gerard would win this fight more times than not. First off, the strongest statement for Gerard takes place after the statement for Jugram, and I think those statements are valid in referring to Gerard. So Gerard would be stronger and faster than Jugram, and even if Jugram was able to kill Gerard, he would just come back via immortality, right? And Gerard has a variety of long-range attacks, which Jugram really doesn't have. So I think Jugram would have a tough time with this fight. And before y'all get mad, this nigga Gerard is immortal. He's a god. Like, of course you can argue Jugram counters immortality with the balance, but Gerard is bigger, stronger, faster, has long-range attacks. So he's gonna get constantly braided with attacks left and right. And I don't think he's gonna have enough time to use the balance. So I think Gerard will win more times than not. So in conclusion, Jugram embodies most of the Schutzstaffel, and you can even argue he embodies all of them. Spokes all of their packs individually till he has cancer, and then he dies a sad death. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below if you agreed or disagreed, or if I missed some information. And make sure you turn on post notifications, because I will be posting a lot more content in the future. Alright, I'm out, and I'll see y'all in the next video.
Don't pick up the phone when I'm calling. I'm busy ballin', feeling like I'm sporting, and I do this often. And you know I'm sorry, but you know my body. Pull up to the lobby, and we skip the talking and get to the action, cause I'm about that action.